Hello and welcome to another live edition of Squared Circle Radio, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. I'm your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting Chris Belcher. That's the young buck, Andy York, the whole podcasting show, my brother from another mother, Jared Justice. Before I go any further, I want to extend a special shout out. Happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans, all of our military who has served our great country for us, sacrificed so that we could have the freedom to sit here and do this podcast, watch wrestling, and all the other blessings that we have in life. Special shout out to our brother Levi Batchelor, who I know regularly listens to this podcast, one of my best friends. He proudly served for us as well as so many others. So thank you, thank you, thank you. But fellas, it is a loaded show. We got lots to talk about. Andy York, Raw has wrapped. What a SmackDown it was. We are marching towards Survivor Series very, very clearly.
Yeah, it's become a lot clearer week by week. I feel like with War Games, so there's a lot to talk about, a lot to dive into, and we get to do some of our favorite things, which is fantasy book. So it's going to be a fun show.
Fantasy booking, Jared, because not only is Survivor Series becoming clear, but we're starting to get glimpses, Jared, of WrestleMania. So we got to put the Squared Circle Radio imprint on it right now, right?
I agree, man. I mean, we're seeing week to week everything just kind of come into focus more and more. I was not expecting there to be a need for a fifth man in the War Games match, but that's where we're headed, I guess.
A fifth man, a fifth woman. We'll have to see exactly what happens with it, but we are here to talk about all of it. So we're live on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. So make sure that you guys are joining in the conversation. We will take your comments and your questions live. Listen, I say this every single week. I've got notes right here. We got lots to talk about, but listen, you guys fire up those comments, you ask those questions, and we will take them. You control the direction of the show. If this is your first time being with us, be sure to hit the thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That helps us a ton and doesn't cost you anything. All right, guys, Monday Night Raw is in the books. Let's get there. And before we do, full disclosure, we are all Southerners. Weather just cannot decide what it's doing right now. We are all dealing with the crud. So we're going to try our best to mute ourselves if we have to cough or whatever. We're all dealing with it. So we apologize in advance, but we're going to do our best to make it through this show. Monday Night Raw tonight, and apparently, Andy, they're taping Monday Night Raw for next week as well. A loaded show that they've announced for next week with Bronson Reed versus Seth Rollins again, Sheamus and Braun Breaker for the Intercontinental title. Should be a loaded show. But let's talk about tonight. We mentioned War Games, the way the show went off the air. These four ladies standing tall, Bianca Belair, Naomi, Jade Cargill, and Io Sky, all standing tall over Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, and then also interfering Tiffany Stratton and Nia Jax. So it seems pretty clear this is at least 4-on-4, Andy, but as we're going to talk about with the men, seems like we're going to get a fifth member as well. So a little bit here as far as the women go as well, but I'll let you discuss.
Yeah, this is the first time, I think, for the women. I don't remember the first War Games on the main roster, but where it's like a thrown together, like just random teams being put together for a War Games match. Because we saw it with the men last year, and then the year before that was Bloodline. So I'm all for it. I enjoy it. It's a weird combination. I think you brought it up last week or 2 weeks ago about Damage Control being a part of this. I don't know if it's actually going to be all of Damage Control or just EO. Because I think that adds a really cool wrinkle into possibly Bayley being the fifth member for this team, and the relationship between not just Bayley and EO, but Bayley and Bianca and Jade at the same time, and Naomi in the middle. So it's a really weird combination, but it's really interesting. And it looks like we may get our Battle of the Moonsaults off the top of the cage with Io Sky and Tiffany Stratton. So I am all on board with it.
Let's go, Jared. Let's go.
Yeah, man, I feel good about it. I was really wondering, like, how on earth are they going to make me care at all about this women's War Games match if they have one? And so tonight they kind of got me at least to see what I would need to care about. I'm not going to say I care yet, but we're going to see.
We're getting there. I know I'm going to care a lot more once the fifth member for the heel team gets added, and that has to be Candice LeRae. All signs point to that. And then the fifth member, like Andy said, most likely would be Bayley. There's a chance that it could be Kairi Sane, because then you could have moonsaults and big elbows off the top of the cage. So that would be cool. We saw the return of Dakota Kai tonight. I doubt she's going to be in the War Games match. Andy, I think you're spot on. I think Bayley makes the most sense here. We saw, again, as I mentioned, Candice LeRae, we saw this interaction on SmackDown with Candice trying to one-up Tiffany and this little feud that they've got going back and forth. Jared, I'm curious as to, we've speculated, Andy and I talked about this last week as you weren't able to be on the show. We're starting to really get tired of the teasing of the cash in of Tiffany Stratton. She's had this briefcase long enough. It's okay to tease it every now and then, but Jared, it seems like they're doing it every week, and I'm sure that's going to continue as this War Games build happens. So does she cash in War Games? I mean, it's a perfect spot to do it. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I could see at the end of the War Games match or something like the cage going up and then she cashes it in. I mean, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I've been tired of her acting like she's going to cash it in, especially whenever she didn't at Saudi, and she basically said she was going to. I mean, I think she just outright said it, and then still didn't do it. And I'm like, this ain't never going to happen. So it's getting old.
Yeah, I still feel the same way about it. I wish it did happen at Saudi Arabia, but I think it's really interesting, the concept of it happening post War Games on her own teammate. Like, I think that's a really interesting dynamic. I think it would have been better though if they hadn't been like teasing it for 3 months straight now. Like if they made you forget about it and then all of a sudden she pulls it out at the end or whatever and wins it. I think that's way more effective than, teasing here or there and going back and forth on it.
Could easily be a thing where, like you guys are saying, at the end of the War Games match, it could be something where, Tiffany loses the War Games match and then Nia finally gets it. So it's not Tiffany's the one that snaps on Nia. Nia finally snaps on Tiffany, attacks her, and then everybody jumps Nia for attacking Tiffany. And then Tiffany just gets up, prettiest moonsault ever, 1, 2, 3, and we have a new women's champion. So, Jared, there's a lot of different ways they could go with that, but I'm with you. I think we need to get it at this War Games. If not, like what in the world are we waiting on? Like, are we really going to do this at WrestleMania? I know we're fantasy booking WrestleMania in a little bit, and I know Tiffany Stratton is into some plans. Jared, do we wait that long and we get a Money in the Bank cash in 2 WrestleManias in a row?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, I think it happens at Survivor Series, hopefully.
I think so too. I think so too. All right, Andy, let's move on to the other thing that happened, the big thing that happened on Monday Night Raw tonight. Of course, we're going to talk Bloodline stuff, but we're going to kind of tie all that together with everything that happened on SmackDown here in just a minute. But the big thing that happened on Raw, I know you guys don't like talking about the Miz. I know you don't. But we have to bring it up, Andy, because tonight the Miz officially seemed to align himself with the Final Testament. Tonight's the first night, Andy, that the Wyatt Six are left laying the Final Testament with the attack, the Miz, and all of this. What did you make of this?
I thought they did it really well. Of making the Miz seem like he had actually turned, was scared enough to turn back his ways and all this, and then it was all just a disguise to turn on the Wyatt Six. We saw kind of this happen with American Alpha when they beat down on Bo Dallas, when he was just Bo Dallas, and then he started doing the laughing thing and everything else. I'm very curious to see where this goes, because this is, are we going to get another multi-man match at War Games that's not inside of War Games, or are we getting 3 War Games matches? Because that would be too many, in my opinion. I don't know where this really leads, because this doesn't feel like it should happen on just a random episode of Raw. Like, this feels like it should be built to a pay-per-view. But are we really going to stretch the first match all the way to Rumble, or is it going to be on Saturday Night Main Event? I could see that happening too. But it's just a weird timing of it, I think, for me, unless it's going to happen at War Games.
I think it's going to be traditional Survivor Series match with those 4-on-4.
That could be, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could definitely see that. We normally have 5 matches on a pay-per-view. Some of the bigger pay-per-views have 6 or 7. So I could see them easily doing a traditional Survivor Series match with these guys. I kind of lean towards Andy. I know you said not a random episode of Raw, but I kind of lean towards the Netflix debut. If you stretched it out that far, I don't know what more you could do with the guys in this feud, but I could definitely see. But if you're doing that, you have to incorporate Scarlett. Jared, you've been clamoring for her to wrestle for a long time. You got to incorporate Scarlett because otherwise you need another male on the other side of the Wyatt Six, unless we're getting Braun Strowman, who we haven't seen in a while. So I know he's injured, but maybe we get that. I don't know. So we'll see where it goes. I'll be interested to see how long this build goes, for instance. Appreciate you guys being with us. We are live on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Drop your comments, drop your questions. We'll take them live. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, what in the world are you waiting for? We've got a few viewers here. Let me tell you about one of our great partners, WSN, the Wrestling Society Network. It's a great app for wrestling fans. They've got movies, they've got video game stuff, they got all kinds of wrestling stuff. So here, let me tell you about their app. We'll play this commercial, and then we'll be right back on the other side.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brady Owens here, owner of WSN, here to tell you that if you were bored, then go to your Roku, Fire Stick, Amazon Fire, or Apple TV, and download the WSN app. On the WSN app, we have all kinds of wrestling content, including our live stream. We have some incredible specials and wrestling movies with wrestlers in them. We have new arrivals almost every other week of incredible content. We have the WSN Top Picks, some of the best stuff we have picked by yours truly and the rest of the WSN team. We have premium live events. We have wrestling bloodiest battles, documentaries, which is one of our our most viewed sections. Weekly reality shows, TNA specials. We have CCW Alive. We have wrestling cartoons for the kids. We have more wrestling reality shows. Women of Wrestling showing support. Wrestling Spotlight video games. MAW Warriors biographies. Some incredible wrestling biographies. We have wrestling specials. WSN 2K Proving Ground, Downtime in the Ring, one of the best podcasts out there. Red Figure Wrestling, whether it's collections or action figures, wrestling game shows. We have Traveling the Indies, independent wrestling, wrestling interviews, wrestling talk shows, and an MMA section for all you MMA fans. Download the WSN app today, cure your boredom, and dive into a world of wrestling.
Appreciate those guys. Again, as you can see, there are lots of wrestling content, and we fit right in. We are so glad to partner with them. Professor Bear and those guys over there, thank you so much for welcoming us into the family, and thank you for welcoming us into your YouTube home. We are live right after Monday Night Raw. We are live each and every Monday. That's my brother from another mother, Jared Justice, the Young Buck, Andy York. My name is Chris Belcher. Thank you for being with us. Again, if it's your first time, hit that subscribe button. We got some comments that we need to get to here. And again, this goes directly into our next topic. Candy says, Cody needs the bloodline to stay relevant. It's an interesting take. Let's talk about this bloodline situation and the potential involvement of Cody Rhodes in the War Game scenario. Of course, we saw it this past Friday, the OG Bloodline reuniting in the middle of the ring, throwing up the ones after a little bit of controversy at the beginning of the show. Roman Reigns running Sami Zayn down in a promo, but listen, Solo said that he had a fifth man for War Games, and it was Sami, and Sami showed his allegiance to Roman Reigns, and as you see right here, it is a War Games match. This is not an official graphic, so I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there right now. It's not an official graphic. Somebody made this online that I wanted to show. These are the 4 right now, but Jared, apparently we're looking for a fifth member for both sides. We saw the Usos and Sami Zayn go around on Monday Night Raw tonight and attempt to try to find somebody. We even saw Solo Sikoa trying to remove Seth Rollins on the show. And then as Candy says, Cody needs the bloodline. So There's a 5th spot open. Is the American Nightmare going to fill it?
I mean, I can't think of anybody else who would fit into the match better than Cody Rhodes and The Rock. If you're going to add that 5th man, I mean, I just don't see who else you would add or why you would add them at this point. So, I mean, if I had to guess, I guess that would be my guess. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if just The Rock's going to randomly appear like before Survivor Series and join up, or if they're just going to go a completely different route. But I think that's the only thing that makes sense that I can see.
Yeah, I kind of think the same way of, we talked about before, would it make sense if Cody joined the Bloodline storyline? And I think with him being the only one to turn to Sammy whenever Sammy turned on Roman in the first place, and then you had the whole WrestleMania storyline going into 39, and then him being the only one to bring Jay in on Raw and on all of that, I think you can make it make sense. Yeah. I don't think The Rock gets announced. I think it's one of those where Solo says our 5th man will show up at Survivor Series. Like, you don't find out until Survivor Series. He doesn't even wait in the cage or anything like that. It's just like last year with Randy. The music counts down, and then The Rock's music hits, and he walks out. So, like, I absolutely can see that scenario happening. If it's not The Rock, because I'm still kind of shocked he's going to wrestle in War Games, I have no idea who this 5th person for the Bloodline would be, unless it's, a heel Kevin Owens, which still wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, but I think you can make it kind of make sense in a weird way. But yeah, I think the 2 most obvious choices are the best choices in Cody and The Rock.
I think I'll go as far as saying if it's not going to be Cody and Rock, it doesn't need to be 5-on-5. It needs to be 4-on-4 because there's rumors of Zilla Fatu, there's rumors of Lance Anoa'i, there's rumors of Hikuleo, all these different Bloodline members who are supposedly signed and just waiting in the wings. Okay, that's cool, but let's think about the weight of this, Jared. This is War Games. This is the OG Bloodline versus the new Bloodline. I could see one of those guys being part of the new Bloodline since we've got all new members except Solo. They're not going to have as big of an impact. They'll probably have a bigger impact than Tonga Loa, but that's not very difficult.
Hey, don't hate on second. Don't hate on the GOAT.
Okay, my bad. But Jared, I think my point is we have waited so long for this OG Bloodline to finally reunite. You can't just throw somebody random, even if it is a family member, as the 5th guy in this War Games match, right? Like, to me, it's bigger than that.
I could completely see them bringing in somebody besides The Rock, like another family member for the new Bloodline. But as far as the other team, I definitely don't see anybody besides Cody that would make sense at all. But, I mean, it looks like that's what we're getting, this 5-on-5. So they're going to have to, pull a name out of a hat somewhere, I guess.
Now, Andy, I will say this. As I'm watching Monday Night Raw, I'm sitting there thinking they're going through the 5th man. I'm like, okay, Cody. Makes sense. But then when Sammy approached Seth, I went, oh, I could get behind that. Right? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, it makes sense because of the Shield history and everything that happened at WrestleMania this past year. But I think character-wise, it makes more sense for Cody to be the one more willing to. We've already seen him team with Roman, so he's already kind of burnt that bridge. Whereas Seth is the kind of guy that holds a grudge and doesn't let it go and will never let it go. And so he even said that in the promo tonight of he will never team with Roman Reigns again. And I think that's a hill he will die on until, some point down the line, maybe Jon Moxley returns to WWE and we get a mini Shield reunion. I'm still holding out on that prayer at some point. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never say never in the wrestling business, but I think it's smart for his character to say, he's never going to team with Roman again. And he wants nothing to do with any of it. Like he gave his knee for the match last time. He wants nothing to do with it.
Gave his knee and his back. Jared made himself a Shield. But it would have been interesting, I think, to put Seth on that team. Candy, we appreciate your comment. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please make sure that you do so. And for those of you who are watching or new to the program, make sure you do that as well. All right, Jared, some big, we mentioned Kevin Owens. Man, for the first time in I don't know how long, a pile driver was used on WWE television. Jared, everybody sold this so well. The crowd was shocked. It was just executed perfectly, man. It made the move mean so much. The storytelling was great here. Of course, Kevin Owens pile driving Randy Orton to continue their incredible feud, Jared.
Dude, my problem that I have with this whole pile driver thing is you have like where they jump off the ropes and Adam Cole's old move basically.
Canadian Destroyer.
Yeah, if you're going to allow Canadian destroyers, then why on earth would you not allow a normal pile driver? It drives me nuts. But we are where we are, so I mean, it does. We got the pile driver. It was a very protected looking pile driver. It looks like a pile driver that me or you would have given each other back in the day, just to make sure we didn't accidentally kill one another.
Oh, that's
right.
There you go.
But yeah, man, they don't use it very much, so you pull that rabbit out of the hat and it works. Whereas, in AEW, you could never do this because it's just a move they use every match like 5 times. So,
yeah, it's the, I think it was Busted Open where it was Mark Henry and Bully Ray were talking about it, where the DDT back in the day was like the most protected finisher that everybody wanted to use and all this. And then it just became a normal wrestling move. And then the super kick has kind of become the same thing. The pile driver has started on the independent scene, at least the pile driver has become that move as well. But within WWE, I mean, it is as protected and as, less likely to see as all get out. I think with the Canadian Destroyer, it just looks so different than just busting out the old school pile driver. My only complaint with this is I wish he'd have done the package pile driver just because that'd have been old school Kevin Owens. That was like my only minor complaint with this. I loved it. Like, I think them not using the pile driver, I think the last time it was used was when Punk busted it out against Cena on that random Raw, and they both got in trouble for it. I think that's like the last time they used it. So it makes sense for it to be as protected as it was, and everybody sold it perfectly. So when now they come back and Randy Orton punts Kevin Owens, like we bring that finisher back as well, and we're back full circle. So I'm ready for it. I really, really, really enjoyed this segment.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought it was really, really good. Jared, let me ask you this. We talked about building towards Survivor Series. Obviously, we're headed towards a regular Kevin Owens Randy Orton match. We didn't get to see it at Crown Jewel. We're going to see it at some point. All signs seemingly point to Survivor Series, which is 2.5 weeks away, something like that at this point. But, Jared, we saw them stretch a Randy Orton out. So I would assume he's not coming back this coming week. So is bringing him back the following week, the night before Survivor Series, enough time to be able to build this? Or do we see this go stretch out a little further so that we can sell this injury at least?
Man, the way that the pay-per-views are today, they don't really care as much about buy rate. So if it was back during buy rate times where everybody was paying like $34.95 or whatever it was, then I would say, yeah, you need to draw this out and build it up a little bit longer. But the way that things are today, man, I think you can go ahead and rush it and have yourself an ambulance match or some kind of stretcher type match. Just throw them in that and let them go wild. And I'm sure we're going to build to more matches between them anyways. So, I mean.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Andy.
Yeah, I agree. And, I think I don't think this match happens at War Games. Like, I don't think it happens at Survivor Series. I think this gets stretched out even further. Just because we've already talked about it. There's going to be 2 War Games matches already. I think Gunther and Priest has been confirmed for Survivor Series.
Yep.
And then, you're probably going to have one other match on there, maybe this, but that's maybe where they do Final Testament versus the Wyatt Six as well. So I don't see them doing a whole lot of matches on here, but I could see them doing a segment where maybe Randy returns at Survivor Series, just like he did last year, making it full circle, or, maybe Kevin Owens comes out there and somebody else comes out there and gets in his face or gets involved. The only thing that confuses me is if we are heading to a Bloodline 5-on-5 and we are saying Cody is getting involved, it seems like Cody is also getting involved in this as well. So I could see Cody not being in War Games and us getting Cody versus Kevin at Survivor Series instead.
That makes a lot of sense, Jared. I mean, that's the other route to take Cody. Obviously, we've speculated already who would be the fifth man if it's not Cody, and nobody really seems to add up. But Jared, the world champion, is in a couple of different feuds. That's the product of Triple H storytelling. It would make a lot of sense to do Cody and KO, and then you, like Andy said, have Randy return.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm going to die on the hill that other than Cody Rhodes, nobody makes sense for that War Games match. So
I agree with that. Yep, I agree. Jared, the crazy thing that happened in this segment, as you know, the stretcher and Cody going in the ambulance and the pile driver, blah, blah, blah. Jared, Michael Cole said hospital. He did not say local medical facility.
Wow.
And he said it more than once.
A pile driver and the use of the word hospital. Wow, man.
And he's talking about TNA and New Japan every week. I mean, we're in a definitely a different era. One other thing I think could honestly happen is Cody be involved in this and Kevin get involved in the War Games match. Like he could climb into the cage and just beat Cody up, and then that's, you know, that gives the original Bloodline the excuse if they lose, which, you know, if The Rock's involved, they're more than likely going to lose. And so I think it gives them that escape route as well. So I think, like you said, this is one of the benefits of having several people in different feuds at the same time, is you're able to kind of write yourself out of the corner sometimes that you put yourself in. And this is one of those moments where that could happen.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of options, as we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes as we fantasy book towards WrestleMania. One more thing from SmackDown that we need to get to, something that's been speculated for a long, long time, Andy, I want to throw to you first. The Women's United States Championship is official. You see it there on your screen. Nick Aldis revealing the new mid-card championship that seemingly, I think Michael Cole said it, Andy, on commentary, that it was going to be across both Raw and SmackDown. So it doesn't seem like we're getting an Intercontinental Championship just yet. Maybe we see how this goes. I don't know, but thoughts on the mid-card championship?
It's about time. Like, I think this has been a long time coming for them. And so I would rather see a mid-card title than a women's tag title, even though I think the last year or so they've done a much better job of building up the women's tag division. I think having the U.S. title, though, for the women, I think it's smart. And you're going to get more people like, you know, a Natalya or a Candice LeRae, or, you know, people who just aren't in the forefront. You're going to give them an opportunity to get their name out there more. So I'm all for it, as long as it doesn't become, you know, an afterthought or just a prop to move something forward. I hope they establish a legacy behind it and do well with it.
I think it's going to become a prop in a way, like it's going to be another reason why we have an additional match over here that normally we wouldn't have. It's a reason to have and to build on feuds, I think. And so that's what I hope they use it for. I think with as many women as you have right now, it makes sense. And I mean, most of the women are doing pretty good. I mean, the work's pretty solid nowadays. Even like the NXT roster women, I think a lot of them are better than the ones in the main roster. So you bring some of those up, and I mean, you need this title and maybe even another one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the incorporation of Lash Legend and Jakara Jackson recently. So yeah, Jared, I'm right there with you. Some of the NXT talent can come up there and easily make a splash by winning that championship. And then, like Andy said, it benefits a Candice LeRae or a Naomi or somebody like that who needs another championship to maybe help boost some of those younger NXT talents. So, a long time coming for the women's mid-card title, but it is official. It is in the WWE. We'll see how that plays out in the near future. Once again, we appreciate you guys joining us. If you are watching live, drop your comments, drop your questions, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you're watching the replay, you can still do all those things, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast, follow on whatever platform that you are on. Let me take another minute to shout out our other partner, SportsWire Radio, our longest running partner, who will always be our partner if I have anything to say about it. The Reverend Tom Bryce and that crew have you covered 24/7 with anything and everything sports related. But again, if I tried to tell you everything, I would leave something out. Let the Reverend Tom Bryce tell you about SportsWire Radio.
Looking for all the latest happenings in the world of sports and wrestling? Well, you're in luck, because SportsWire Radio has you covered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. With great shows in the world of sports, such as the Pinstripe Chronicles, hosted by Uncle Tats, Donald Stewart, and Rob Barrows. New York Baseball Talk with Chris Bazaya and Rob Maraska. The Liftoff Jets, also hosted by Chris Bazaya and Sharman Phillip. Neil Villapiano and the Devil's State of Mind. Randy Dillon's Hockey Fan Chat. In the world of wrestling, SportsWire Radio has you covered with Squared Circle Radio, featuring Chris Belcher, Andy York, and Jared Justice. Those sit-down marks with DB, Primo, AJ, and Michael. A work in progress, featuring the Mayor of Canton, Piles, and Glenn Abbott. You can catch all of these great shows and more anytime, anywhere, and any place via the Listen Live button on SportsWireRadio.org, and you can also catch SportsWire Radio anytime on YouTube at SportsWire Radio 6579 to catch all the latest happenings in the world of wrestling. SportsWire Radio has you covered. It's all sports matters and all wrestling matters here on SportsWire Radio. I am your host, the owner of SportsWire Radio, the #1 global radio station, the owner of the Promo Wrestling Federation, and one of the owners of the Pride Wrestling Federation. Your voice, figuratively and literally, where all wrestling matters, the Reverend Tom Bryce.
Love that dude. That dude is so awesome. Jared, that gets me pumped up every time I hear that commercial. I'm gonna run through a wall. Let's go.
Yep, the Tom Bryce effect.
That's it. That is it. The Tom Bryce effect. Appreciate that, dude. All right, it's time for the main event. We've been teasing it for a couple of weeks, and we have said that we need to get out in front of WrestleMania. So we are going to fantasy book a couple of matches on WrestleMania. Now, when I say we're going to fantasy book this, we're not going to tell you what we think that WWE is going to do. Rather, we're going to tell you what we would do if we had the pencil, if we were booking the card from today, November 11th, all the way to April 19th and 20th, 2025, WrestleMania in Las Vegas. Here's how we would book it. We're going to give you a couple title matches. We'll give you a women's match, an attraction match, not the whole card, but we're just going to hit the highlights. Now, full disclosure, we've talked about this just a little bit before doing this. I don't want to spoil everything. We've talked about it just a little bit. And what I will tell you is we all three have the exact same WWE Championship match. And what is that? The triple threat match, the biggest possible match that there could be at WrestleMania. And that is Cody Rhodes defending against both Roman Reigns and The Rock. So if that's the biggest possible match that can happen, okay, awesome. But how do we get there? Andy, kick us off. How would you get there from today to WrestleMania?
So from today to WrestleMania, kind of taking everything that we have seen this week and leading forward, I would have Cody and The Rock be in the War Games match. Kind of how I laid out earlier about Rock just showing up the night of, coming in and hitting one move. I would have him come in, hit a rock bottom on Roman, probably, and pin him 1, 2, 3, gets the win, establishes the new bloodline, which then takes us to Royal Rumble, where I would have Rock and Cody main event that show. But earlier in the night, I would have Roman win the Rumble to start the show off. Main event time, I would have Roman interrupt that match, costing The Rock. And then the next night, or that Friday night, declaring he's going after Cody Rhodes in the world title. The Rock comes out, gets involved, tells him that, he would be champion if it wasn't for The Rock. Cody comes out and says, you know what? About 2 years of this, and I'm sick and tired of it. We are ending this at WrestleMania 41. And we're doing Rock versus Roman versus Cody. And, a lot of other stuff will happen in between, but those are like the major points that I would hit.
Jared, if you were booking it, any major points that you would do different if you're thinking about it along the way?
Man, I'm not going to give specific times at which I'd have this happen, but I would have Roman get his Ulafala back so he can kind of take his attention away from most of the bloodline, the new bloodline right now. And then I think that you have Cody retain the title. You have Roman, he can get into the title picture however you want, if you want him to win the Rumble or whatever. But you have Roman and Cody going nose to nose, and they're mouthing off at each other, and we're setting up for this match. Boom, the Rock's music hits. And the way that I think you could absolutely get the most like hatred towards The Rock is if he does nothing at all to earn it. He just comes out and says, boys, last time I let y'all have this thing, I let the match happen. It ain't happening again because now The Rock is in the match. And there you have your three-way.
I like both of your points. I really do. Jared, I think you made a great point in saying that Roman needs to get the Ula follow back first so that he can then focus on the WWE Championship. I think that's a great point. I also think it's a great point about The Rock just wielding his power and saying, nope, forget that. I'm in the match. Forget you. Here's how I would do it. Andy, I was with you with Cody and The Rock one-on-one at the Rumble, but you know what I'm about to say. The Rock wins the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble. He is the champion going into WrestleMania. I still think that Roman also wins the Royal Rumble that night. So we're seemingly headed towards Rock Roman one-on-one. And then somehow, some way, Cody Rhodes weasels his way back into it. The Cody crybabies come back up. We want Cody, blah, 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 blah. Cody gets back into the match, but Rock says, okay, we can make a triple threat match. If you beat Jacob Fatu in night one, and then you win in night one, then you can be in the match in night two. Cody wins night one. Cody wins night two. He gets the championship back. And then the Raw after WrestleMania, Randy Orton punts Cody's head off, and we're off to the races with a Cody Randy story that culminates at SummerSlam. That's what I would do.
I like it.
I like it. I think the only thing I would do different is I wouldn't have Rock win at Rumble. I'd have him win at Mania. And I would have him hold the belt hostage for a year and like show up on TV or video packages or whatever, like at a TKO board meeting as the champ and like all these other things where he like wielded his power there to then build to WrestleMania 42, having Roman be the guy to take it or wherever the case is.
Andy, listen, a guy that is upset about people holding championships hostage. He's talking about Rock winning and holding hostage.
Here's the thing. If it's for a storyline purpose, I'm fine with it. Brock was never for a storyline purpose. Brock was just because Vince loved Brock. That was it.
Well, Jared, we're not going to talk about Vince and Brock and what happened there.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't.
Of course not.
No.
Okay, so since we all three agreed on this, let me play devil's advocate and let me present Andy, or we all three said that Cody and Rock would face at the Rumble. Okay, what are the chances that we just go straight Cody Rock at WrestleMania instead of the Rumble? We go Cody Rock WrestleMania. So then the question becomes, Andy, what do you do with Roman Reigns at that point? Well, what would happen if you went Roman Reigns, Jacob Fatu at WrestleMania? Is that the only alternative for Roman if he's not in the main event?
Yes. Like I don't think you can stretch Roman solo out to WrestleMania. I think this is the only other viable solution. I also think, just throwing out ideas of possibilities. You said, Cody would have to go through Jacob to get to Rock. I think it would be really interesting if Rock, we didn't know what the main event of WrestleMania 42 or 41 was, but Rock was champ and was going to fight somebody, and it was going to be either Cody or Roman if they got through their opponent, and you do this match and then do Cody versus, Randy Orton or Kevin Owens or somebody like that. But yeah, if Roman is not involved in the world title picture, that is the only match that should happen.
Yep, I agree. I can't see anything else that would make sense for Roman other than Jacob Fatu.
I mean, I think having him against Solo is a step down at this point because, as Jared said, he's got to win the Ulafala back from Solo. So maybe you do that. Maybe Roman pulls double duty at Rumble. Maybe he wins the Ulafala and he wins the Royal Rumble or something like that. I even thought of a scenario where Roman wins the Rumble, but then Rock wields his power and just takes the match from him because that's what Rock does. Got a comment here from the man with 3 H's. I love that. I'm booking Cody to pin Rock clean. Me and my buddy Sean have beef that goes back a couple of decades, of course, referring to Shawn Michaels and Triple H possibly having beef with The Rock. Jared, that's pretty funny, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to look at where everybody ended up. I mean, Triple H is running the company and Rock is above running the company. So, I mean. And
Sean's running NXT. I mean, we're all. It's all good. It's all gravy for all of us, right, Andy?
Oh, it's great. Like I never would have thought, and I don't think anybody would have thought looking at wrestling in 2024 that those three would be in the positions that they're in. Especially what we talked about last week with Rock's debut in '96 when we talked about it. Like if you'd have looked at somebody that night and said that guy's going to be not only the most popular person in the world, but he's also going to be like on the board that is now in charge of WWE, nobody would ever believe you at all.
100%, you are correct. So we appreciate that comment, man with 3 H's. I won't give your government name there, but subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We would appreciate that so very much. All right, let's move on to the World Heavyweight Championship match. Full disclosure, Andy and I have the same match here, so let's throw this up real quick. We would both book Gunther to defend against John Cena in his final WrestleMania match. So, Andy, real quick, would you have John win or lose here?
I would have him probably lose. Okay. I would have Gunther beat him at WrestleMania in like a really good match, but I would still have Gunther win.
Yeah, I would have Gunther win as well. But, Jared, you have Gunther in a different World Heavyweight Championship match. Who would you have the ring general go up against?
I'd have him go up against Braun Breaker, man. And I would not have Braun Breaker beat him this time. But again, like you two fine gentlemen were saying, he would put up a heck of a fight and almost beat Gunther. And then I would honestly keep the belt on Gunther until the next WrestleMania. Let Braun Breaker just keep destroying everybody. And you rerun that next year. Next time Braun wins. And then you could have a pretty good amount of time before he even gets anywhere near the WWE Undisputed title picture. But you have a year of Gunther just doing what he does, man. Just powerbombing the crap out of everybody and pinning them. And then next year, Braun Breaker gets his title.
All right. I like that. I really do. I like that because Braun Breaker is a star in the making. So, you can't just give him the title altogether. You got to build him up. And then Gunther's a great way to build him up. And of course, Gunther's going to be a multi-time world champion, sending him over on the other side, having a feud with Cody, maybe take the title from Cody. Who knows? So, Jared, I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay. Andy and I both included John Cena in that match. This is John Cena's final WrestleMania. He has said it. He's going to be there. He's going to have a match. So what do you do with the GOAT in his final?
Jacob Fatu, baby.
Jacob Fatu and John Cena. Oh, I'm assuming that Jacob squashes him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it would be basically, everybody thought that Solo Sikoa would be like the next best thing we could see to Umaga and John Cena. It was nowhere near it. But now you take Jacob Fatu and put him in there with John Cena. That's as close as we can get to John Cena and Umaga ever again.
I mean, you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The man with 3 H's is back with another fun comment. He says, Sean's doing a good job at beating the so-called competition. I think they call themselves elite something, whatever. I love that. That's fantastic. NXT. It was, I will say,
the elite show I don't watch. That's what they call themselves.
Andy, I will say this with you being the AEW, the resident AEW expert on the panel here. It was closer than I expected, honestly. as far as the ratings go. Like I thought NXT would just annihilate them, and they did not. It was closer than I thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think both sides are doing better than people realize sometimes. And, it's just an off night. Like, NBA's back, NHL's back. There's just a random Wednesday. So, I think you're going to see moments like that where ratings are going to spike and then they're going to drop when other things are happening.
All right, let's talk about the women on the WrestleMania card. Andy, what is your main women's match? Doesn't have to be for a title, but what's your main women's match on the card?
So my main women's match is I would have Tiffany Stratton as champion defend against Charlotte Flair. That would be my women's match that I would have happen. The two pretty blondes going at it because, that's what wrestling is all about apparently. But I think it's time for the new generation to get a massive win over Charlotte at WrestleMania. And I think this would really boost Tiffany to the next level. By beating somebody like Charlotte at WrestleMania.
See, I completely agree. And then, Jared, I'll let you weigh in on my match as well, because my match is different. When I say I agree, Andy, I agree that the new generation needs to win over Charlotte Flair, but it's not going to be Tiffany Stratton that gets it done. It's going to be Jade Cargill that gets it done over Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. This match was teased on, I think, the season premiere of SmackDown when Jade Cargill made her first appearance there. I think it's the match in the making. I think if anybody, Jared, can make Jade Cargill look really, really good, it's Charlotte Flair. So if you want her to look the best way possible, put her in there with Charlotte. Let Charlotte put her over. But, I mean, Tiffany Stratton would be great as well. That's just where I would go with it. Jared, what are your thoughts on both of those?
I like both of them. As soon as you said that about the women's match, I didn't book one. But what came in my head was Tiffany Stratton against Charlotte Flair. I mean, that just popped in my brain as soon as you said that. But seeing what both of you all did, if we didn't have to worry about wrestling skill, I would have Jade Cargill against Tiffany Stratton. I think that would be the other match that was kind of going in my head. As long as you would not expose Jade Cargill. I don't know what level she's at right now, but if she can go with Tiffany, I say throw in there with Tiffany.
Yeah, that would be interesting, Andy. You're really showcasing the future of the WWE women's division on WrestleMania right there.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think that's, if you want to do something outside of, the four horsewomen and Bianca at WrestleMania, then that's your perfect opportunity to do that with Tiffany and with Jade.
Yep, I agree. All right, Andy, your men's attraction match. Ours is very, very similar. So you give yours first. I'll weigh in with mine, and then we'll discuss.
So this is the match that should have happened at WrestleMania last year if people didn't get injured. But that would be CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. That is, a marquee match. Honestly, depending on what the rest of the card looks like, I could see that potentially main eventing night one of WrestleMania, having Punk versus Rollins.
I like Punk versus Rollins, but I'm going to double it up. I'm going to add a third man to this match. I think it's Drew McIntyre. Now listen, Andy, I was with you when CM Punk came into the company that Punk Rollins is the match. Always has been. Their personal beef with each other spilled over onto, we saw Rollins' reaction when Punk returned. So obviously that's the match that we've built toward. But Jared, 2024 Drew McIntyre inserting himself into this feud. Let's just blow it up and have them all three. What's better, Punk versus Rollins? Throw Drew in there and let's just let them go. That's what I would do.
I'm happy either way it goes with either one of those two matches, man. I mean, I'm all in for it.
Yeah, Andy, would you be disappointed if they added Drew in there though?
I don't think I'd be disappointed, but I don't necessarily need to see another Drew Punk interaction for a while. I think I would let the Hell in a Cell match be the last thing for them, but I mean, I'm not going to be upset because I know that match is going to be ridiculous if all three of them are together.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Either way, I mean, we just booked any of those matches, maybe with the exception of Tiffany and Charlotte, could main event night 1 of WrestleMania. Probably not main eventing night 2. We're not taking that away from the WWE Championship spot, but any of those matches could easily main event night number 1. We're going to talk all about WrestleMania as we continue down the road to WrestleMania. So make sure that you're locked in to our YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up on the video. That helps the algorithm. We would appreciate that so much. And again, if this is your first time subscribed, tell a friend. We are live every Monday night after Raw. And if you're listening on podcast, follow on whatever platform that is. All right, guys, as we get ready to wind down here, lots of things happen in the world of wrestling. Like Andy mentioned a minute ago, Seth Rollins getting hurt, CM Punk getting hurt, and that match getting thrown off. Well, guys, a lot of stuff like that happens where guys get hurt and we're supposed to see things and it doesn't come to fruition. Or a guy signs a contract and he goes to another company or whatever. Of course, I'm talking about the biggest what ifs in the world of wrestling. What if Hogan wasn't the third man? What if it was Sting? What if the list goes on and on and on? So we're going to break down some of the biggest what ifs the world of wrestling has ever seen. And I'm going to throw to Jared first because I know he's got a great one, mainly because I want to talk about it. Go ahead, Jared. What is your biggest what if in the world?
What if Shawn Michaels had never broken his back? Yep, right there. So that's supposedly where the injury occurred. I don't know. I speculate that he was already having back issues before this. But whenever that he took the backdrop onto the casket, I mean, you can kind of see the oh crap look on his face as he's flying through the air, sees the casket, goes down on it, and it just kind of grazes it with the edge of his back, which I'm sure did something terrible to his vertebrae. But yeah, man, I just wonder, like, if Shawn had not had that back injury, he would have stuck around and probably stayed on top for a pretty good while. My guess would be until the point that Vince finally got sick of him and all of his shenanigans and probably just fired him outright from the WWF. And I think we would probably have had a situation once that happened to where he found God, he came back, he repaired his relationships. I think that would have happened regardless of how it went for Shawn. But it's just crazy to look back at, like, the way, I mean, what effect would that have had on the Shawn and Bret Hitman Hart Survivor Series match? I mean, just so many things it would have, like affected if Shawn had never got hurt, never had any back issues.
It's insane because, like, basically that you're saying that, like, everything would have happened the way that it did. It would have just happened like 3 years later than it actually did. I went down a terrible rabbit hole when Jared sent me this. I think Shawn probably would have died. Honestly, you go back and you listen to Triple H talk about how he was basically putting Shawn on luggage carts and wheeling him up to his room. And he would set an alarm for every hour to make sure Shawn was still breathing because Shawn was doped up on so many pain meds and all this, that, and the other. And he was having such abuse problems. I mean, I hate to say that. I hate to be morbid, Andy, but the fact of the matter is Shawn Michaels was not doing good before the back injury happened. Then the back injury happened, and then he was just in a terrible, terrible place. So I'm with Jared. Like, Vince would have fired him, and then he would have spiraled so far down. I hate to go that route, but man, it's just sad to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it, like you said, it probably would have ended not great for Shawn, whether it was as extreme as him, not being able to beat his demons or just simply being fired or let go from the company. I'm not going to go that deep down the rabbit hole. I'll stay in the world of wrestling. Honestly, like, could you imagine that doesn't happen, and let's say he does end up getting fired? What are the chances that he goes to WCW? Like, what are the chances that he is their main guy now? Like, could you imagine a world where, if he does go to WCW and everything kind of plays out the same, I don't think Hogan turns heel. I think the NWO is Shawn and Diesel or Nash and Hall. Like I think that's all of the thing that they're playing into. I think it would have, if he would have never hurt his back and got fired, I think it would have changed the landscape of wrestling forever. And I think it's crazy to look back and kind of see that.
It's very interesting because there was always rumors, Jared, that Sean wanted to go be with his buddies. He wanted to go to WCW, and Vince wouldn't let him go. He said, "You'll never be happy there. They'll never use you right over there." And Vince held him hostage basically, and probably for good reason. I guess I'll climb out of the morbid thing, Jared, and I'll say, listen, we have this conversation all the time about which run of Sean's was better, pre-back injury or the comeback in 02. I would argue that the comeback in 02 is the better run, but Jared, we don't get that unless he breaks his back. He goes out of the company, he finds God, like you mentioned, and then he comes back. And Jared, he has some of the best matches that we have ever seen.
I just wonder if, again, going back to, I think his back was hurt already before that backdrop onto the casket. I think that's probably just what finished him off. But I wonder if he had never have had the back problems, would Sean have even been on dope? I mean, it seemed like a wild child, so maybe he would have found his way into that regardless. But, I mean, even before that back injury, supposedly he was doping himself up because he hurt so much.
Right. And because nobody was wrestling like Sean back then, and Sean was taking so many chances, and he was trying his best to carry the company on his back at a time where nobody else was doing that, and they were getting their tails kicked in the ratings, which leads me to one of my biggest what ifs in the world of wrestling. We all know the story of WCW leads in the ratings for 83 weeks in a row. And then they give away that Mankind's going to win the world championship. And that was the night that everything turned. And the WWE never looked back as far from a ratings perspective. But what if, Jared, the Monday Night Wars result was reversed? What if WCW had won a Monday Night War? Because, guys, it's explicitly said in the Vince McMahon documentary on Netflix, he was weeks away, not months, not years. He was weeks away from closing the doors of the WWE during the Monday Night Wars. Because
can you imagine, bro? Like, can you imagine what kind of wrestling matches we would be having right now? All the things on the poll that you could put up there, bro, we're putting it on a poll. That's what I foresee if WCW had won.
Oh, Lord.
So if that's the result, then there would not be wrestling in 2024. Honestly, I think if WCW would have won and you give Bischoff all the control of everything, I don't think he could handle it. Like, I think he would have crumbled under the pressure. I honestly think Vince probably would have got back involved in WCW and just changed it back to WWF with all of their stuff, and we'd be right back where we are now. But if we're living in that timeline, I don't see them lasting forever. I really don't.
I'm 100% with you. Like, I wrote it down in my notes. Like, did WWE winning the Monday Night Wars save pro wrestling as we know it?
I'll say this. TNA would be the number one promotion right now, which is crazy to probably think about. Or ECW, one of the two. Like, it's that's the dark timeline of wrestling, I think.
Really is. Yeah.
Now, for a couple weeks together.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, Andy, give us a big what if that you're thinking of.
So I'll kind of stay on the same track as what we've been talking about a little. And that is, what if Jericho never left WWE in 2018? And the reason why I say that is because shortly after this is when he would go to Japan and wrestle Kenny Omega twice and win the IC title there. And then that's when they started to do All In. and he got involved there. His first time showing up on a non-WWE program in the States, which then led ultimately to the launch of AEW. So, we credit obviously Cody and Tony Khan and the Elite were the masterminds behind the creation of AEW, but I don't think it would have necessarily taken off or gotten off the ground if Jericho didn't leave WWE in 2018.
Yeah, because Jericho might not have a title, but that man is a silent partner in so many different ways. And that company, Jared, would not have survived if Jericho hadn't helped out.
No, I was going to be funny and be like, well, we would have a much better wrestling scene going on today if that happened. but in all reality, we wouldn't, because there would be no competition for WWE. So there'd only be one place to go. And it would either be here in the United States with WWE, or you would have to go probably to Japan. And so I think wrestlers wouldn't be making as good of wages, which would probably bring morale down, probably wouldn't see as good of a product as what we're getting. So I think with AEW coming along and giving WWE competition, I think it was a great thing.
Yeah, it definitely was. I know that we were all excited when AEW was going to launch and what that would bring for the world of wrestling and competition, like you guys are saying. And Jericho was certainly the catalyst for that. You hate to see, as big a fans as we are of Chris Jericho, sometimes you hate to see him go play on the other team because it doesn't seem like, he'll take his rightful place as being honored in the way that he should for being what he was for WWE. But at the same time, he can go do that and be an influencer for a younger generation. I'll stay along those same lines. I'm going to give one more what if, and then we're going to wrap up this show. Appreciate you guys being with us. I'm going to stay along those same lines. Jericho left a place that was his home for, he came in 99, so almost 20 years, to go help start AEW. Andy, you mentioned it. One of those guys that also started AEW was Cody Rhodes. So I must pose the question. What if Cody Rhodes, Andy, never leaves AEW? He started the company. He was one of the CEOs. He broke the throne at All Out. All In, rather. He was one of the guys that spearheaded it. What if Cody Rhodes never leaves AEW?
The easy and honest answer is he would have been AEW's 2015 Roman Reigns. I think he would have been the most hated guy on the roster. Not from within the company. I think from within the company, they would love to have him. And honestly, I think if he stayed in AEW, no matter what his wrestling persona was, I think the product as a whole, I don't think he would have gotten the situations with Punk and all of that stuff. I think he would have taken care of that backstage and everything. But I do think he would not be in the position he's in right now. And I think that has a negative side to it, but I think it also has a positive side to kind of force him to do something out of his comfort zone of maybe, going full-fledged heel. Because everybody's kind of clamoring for that Homelander Cody Rhodes version that we're all looking forward to. That's going to happen at some point. And I think an AEW version of that is really, really interesting because he's unhinged and can do and say whatever he wants. I mean, he went through a flaming table. So, there's no telling what the guy will do, when you release the restrictions. But I think for his career-wise, I don't think it would have ended up as well as it did for him to leave WWE or to leave AEW for WWE.
I think you probably would have seen the rise of LA Knight if that would have happened, because I think you have to plug somebody into that spot where Cody's at right now, you would assume. And I think that LA Knight was, he was on his way until Cody came back and The Rock came back and everything blew up with Roman and Bloodline, and then he just kind of went away. But up until that point, mainly I think when Cody kind of got involved and came back, I think LA Knight would probably be in the Cody Rhodes spot. I don't know how long he would stay there, if he could make it last there like Cody has so far, but I think he would have got a shot.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point, Jared. LA Knight is one of those superstars we don't talk about enough that has been affected by the organic rise of so many others. It's one of those that it comes and goes, and it's not gone for LA Knight by any stretch, because when we were at SmackDown a couple of weeks ago, huge pop for LA Knight. Like it was monstrous. So he's definitely still over. But Jared, I think to your point, that meteoric rise is it's not rising as fast for LA Knight as it once did. I'll say this. You guys are talking about how the wrestling world has changed. And Jared, you mentioned a little bit ago, like the wrestling that we're getting now. Cody Rhodes is not in WWE. I shudder to think where WWE is without Cody Rhodes, because yes, he's Dusty's kid. And yes, he's, a white meat baby face. And that can only last for so long. But what we need to think about, Jared, and I'll throw to you here as we get ready to wind down. What we need to think about is Cody Rhodes, this American Nightmare character, is not created by the WWE machine. And I think that's why it's so popular, because he created it. He brought it in. Everybody's attached to it. And WWE is seeing success, better success than they saw in the Attitude Era. And Jared, you can credit a whole lot of that to Cody Rhodes and just the way he carries himself, his persona, his relationships with the fans, all of those things. And without him, WWE doesn't have that.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you plug in somebody like LA Knight, it just does not work nearly as well. I mean, I don't think you have the guy that's going out there dressed in suits and who's looking all professional and being kind of a role model for the young men. And I don't think LA Knight would have got out there and spent as much time doing all the fanfare, the shows. I just think it would have been a completely different scenario. And I don't think WWE would be raking in nearly as much money as they are since they have Cody.
Yeah, and I think, you talked about the rise of LA Knight being kind of hindered by Cody Rhodes. I'll tell you another guy that I think probably would be in the Cody spot, and it's weird to say because he's already like a high-level main eventer. I think if Cody Rhodes was not in the company, WrestleMania 39 and 40 would have been about Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns instead of Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. And so I think Seth would have filled that spot. And you know how much I love Seth. Like, I absolutely love Seth. I don't think Seth connects as well with the WWE audience though as Cody does.
Agreed.
Because Cody Rhodes in 2024 should not work. Like, he should not work. He's the white meat babyface that John Cena was.
Yep.
But it works because it's believable and people are behind it. And so I completely agree. I don't think WWE would be in the position that they're in. Obviously the rise of Roman Reigns would have helped them out a lot, and all this other stuff. But like we've talked about before, you can't rely on just one megastar, no pun intended with LA Knight, to take the company to the next level. Like the Attitude Era, you had Austin, you had Rock, you had Taker, you had Shawn, you had Triple H, you had so many stars on that roster, and for a while it was just one person. Now you're looking at it and you've got Roman Reigns, you've got Cody Rhodes, you've got Seth Rollins, you've got CM Punk, you've got Drew McIntyre, and now with the possibility of a LA Knight getting to that point too, I don't think that happens nearly as fast as it did if Cody Rhodes doesn't come to WWE.
Yeah, WWE was certainly on their way up after the pandemic. We saw, everything was starting to rise. Roman Reigns was on his way up, but man, Cody Rhodes showing up at WrestleMania 38 just sent the thing into another stratosphere, and then tearing his pec, and then we just entered a whole other level. It's insane. All right, so biggest what ifs. We'll try to bring that segment back around here in a couple of weeks. That's a lot of fun to speculate. What if? What could have happened? What should have happened? Jared, I think the Hogan third man discussion is probably in the works. Just because that's the most popular one, and that's the one that we like to speculate wildly. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week on Squared Circle Radio. Appreciate you guys being with us. If you're live, again, drop your comments in. If you're watching on replay, drop them in. We try to respond to each and every one of them as well. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Jared, anything else to add, man, before we sign off?
No, man, I'm just, I don't think we've been getting as good a quality shows from WWE as we had a few weeks ago, but I still have a very good hope for what we're going to get down the road. Like, I think we're building to something, and maybe they're not making it the most exciting build at the moment, but we can still get back there, and I'm still looking forward to the future. So at least that's a good thing to have with wrestling, a good relationship to have with wrestling these days.
Everything takes time, Andy.
Yeah. And, I would rather between now and Rumble to not be as solid, but then from Rumble to WrestleMania be top-notch booking every week, and we're telling the best stories, because that's the show of shows that we're trying to get to. So as long as they can keep our attention like they did last year, and then I think this year's WrestleMania, I've said it, last year's WrestleMania was possibly, if not the biggest WrestleMania of all time, to only be topped by WrestleMania 41. Like, I think they have that potential to do it this year.
The road has its ebbs and flows, its hills and valleys, and we're going to be right here for it. We just fantasy booked WrestleMania, but guess what, guys? In a couple of weeks, those predictions are probably going to change, and the picture is going to be a lot clearer, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. We're going to be right here for it on Squared Circle Radio. For my brother from another mother, Jared Justice, the Young Buck, Andy York, my name is Chris Belcher. This has been another edition of Squared Circle Radio. Again, happy Veterans Day to all of you who have served. We cannot thank you enough, and we can't thank you enough for checking out our show this week. We will catch you guys down the road.